Danilo De Luca, who outrode race favourite Stefano Garzelli and Gilberto Simoni at Montevergine. But it was an heroic performance by Dario Frigo. He overcame a flat tyre to take the race lead at the top of the mountain. Another bout of hard luck, and the weight of the leader's jersey finally cracked Rick Verbrugge. His reign has ended. Stage 5's relatively flat route provides now a respite from yesterday's toils. It should be a sprinter's showcase as the 2001 Giro d'Italia rolls on. Heading towards Nettuno, down the shores of the Tirreno Sea. This is Michele Gobi and David Casarotto. They're not in any way going to threaten the overall leader of Dario Frigo, but they are leading at the moment by about 6 minutes. They were over 8, but the chase is on, and it's the two teams of the big sprinters who are chasing. For Alessio, it is Quaranta's team, and for Seiko, that's the team of Cipollini. Paul, a good move, but I can't see it staying away. We're around about 50 kilometres to go.
Just about 50 kilometres to the finish line. In fact, they built up a maximum advantage at one time of over 8 minutes. And the last time check we've got coming in is it's now down to 5 minutes and 40 seconds. So obviously the teams of the sprinters are getting quite excited now about the possibility of pulling those two riders back into the fold. And in fact, we're seeing 1 or 2 pink jerseys going to the front too, because one man who's beaten the sprinters on 2 occasions rides for Team Telecom, and that's Danilo Hondo. In fact, the Italian newspapers this morning saying that Danilos have won 3 days on the run. 2 times Hondo and 1 time De Luca. De Luca putting in that great performance yesterday, but I certainly think today the sprinters will try and get their chance, because they don't have too many chances over the next few days.
Well, just before I bring Bob in, I'll just tell you that at the Intergiro sprint, which came today at 43 kilometres, about 27 miles, Massimo Strazza got the victory there, and with getting the victory, he's now the new leader tomorrow in the Intergiro competition. So we've had 1 change of jersey today. And on the only small climb of the day, it was a 3rd category climb after 135 kilometres. David Casarotto going over there ahead of Michele Gobi because of the breakaway very much on at that point. But that won't affect the overall lead of Danilo De Luca. Took the lead yesterday after finishing first on the stage. Well, they're confirming now we are in fact 52 kilometres from the finish. So we're about 1 hour and 20 minutes of racing still to come here on OLN. And these two riders really have thrown down the gauntlet. After we had the sprint at Maddaloni for the Intergiro, they decided then to put in the attack. They got away at around about 60 kilometres. So, Bob, they've already got 100 kilometres in their legs up front.
Interestingly enough, Michele Gobi's Direttore Sportivo, that's his coach, is a man by the name of Stefano Giuliani, one of the craziest bike racers ever. But in his career, he was a part of one of the longest successful breakaways in Giro history, about 200 kilometers away by himself on the front. And his riders are without Ivano Quaranta, their fast man from last year, who changed over to the Alexia team in the offseason. He knows that in order to get some publicity for his team and maybe a stage win, they need to do these long, insane breakaways. It might be pretty close whether or not they make it to the finish or not, but with 3 teams, Telecom, Alexia, and Saeco, pulling the train at the front of the peloton, it's a very hard, burly assignment for these 2 riders to stay away to the finish.
Once again, Bob, it's very interesting to note, isn't it, the yellow line at the front on the right-hand side. Marco Pantani's team seems to be one of the only squads that really ride compact. They're always together in the main field.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to see that they have confidence in Pantani. It means that he's still feeling pretty good, and as the stages get closer to the north of the country where the huge mountain passes are, they'll want to keep him out of danger. Nice to see the whole Mercatone Uno massed around Pantani, very close to the front, something that we didn't get a chance to see in all of last year's Giro. So that's nice to see. Mercatone Uno really riding well so far to protect their team leader and the hope of all Italy, Marco Pantani.
Well, if these two were to stay away, I'd nip down and put your money on Casarotto, because he's the man with the known form. He's had 3 good wins this year, including a race in France where no Paul Sherwin's ridden. I'm sure Bob Roll has too, the Grand Prix Rennes in France, usually running around the same time as the famous Paris-Roubaix, and also the 2nd stage, the Tour of Aragon, and a race in Germany. So he's had a very good start to the year. The other man, Paul, hasn't won a race as a pro. His best claim to fame came back in 1999, I think it was, when he was a road race champion from Europe for the under-23. That's right.
Yeah, his 2nd year as a professional, very young rider, 22 years of age, and in fact still could, if he'd remained in the amateur ranks, take part in that under-23 championships. But a man who we've seen on the attack several times since the start of the Giro d'Italia. But certainly if it came down to a finish, I think Casarotto would be the man in with a chance of taking the win, because in 1997 he also had a very good, successful Classics season. He finished 5th in the Tour of Flanders and 5th in Paris-Roubaix. But I've got a feeling today, and I think probably Bob will agree with me, this group is likely to come together because the sprinters are really mounting up at the front. They've got 3 or 4 different teams chasing.
Yeah, they have. They've had not a lot of success in the race so far. We haven't seen a real, pure field sprint yet. But today, we just might see that and see the sprinters coming to the front. And the Lion King, I'm sure, would love to roar.
Well, you can see there, 5 minutes 12 is the gap now. The leaders, and I'll convert it to miles per hour, are doing 25 miles an hour. The chasers are going approximately 2.5 miles an hour faster than the leaders. Now, on that little calculation, they will get caught before the finish. But, you know, sometimes the escapers do stay away. I don't think it'll be today. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll be back on the road to Nettuno. And there we are, and there is the latest time gap, 5 minutes 20 seconds now, nearly 70 miles in the lead for the 2 breakaways, as the big chase is now starting, as the men in red, Bob, are taking a bit of an interest down there.
Well, this is the red guard of Mario Cipollini, and then they've given the other red guard, the Lotto team, a little bit of a break today. They've been pulling their brains out the first week so far, and they'll be relieved to sit in the peloton for a day because Verbrugge no longer has a pink jersey. And the responsibility for the chase now goes over to the sprinters team, Saeko and Alexia.
Oh, there's been a crash
here.
Yeah, now this always the problem. Touch your wheels in the middle of the peloton, and if our cameras can get in there, we'll have a look. But it looks as though this is just, well, I hate to say it, a routine tumble here. The guys sorting themselves out. There'll be 1 or 2 swear words in no doubt 5 or 6 different languages for the man that made the mistake. It looks okay, Bob.
Doesn't look too bad.
Or is it? This is Perez here. This is the rider, and there's still a rider under his bike there. That's Perez on the left, the man that broke his chain yesterday. When he might have been
a Lotto rider as well.
Yeah, it is. In fact, that's Christoph Brandt.
Yeah, he doesn't look too bad, but
Perez has bumped his nose.
2 days on the run for Perez. Those barriers at the side of the road, by the way, are very, very dangerous. In fact, I fell on one of those myself in a Tour de France, and if you go over with your back and land on that, it certainly does hurt for a couple of days.
Looks like some forks are hanging off of that front wheel there. That's incredible.
That's a carbon fibre fork, and there's the race doctor is out straight away just to check. I think the poor old Julio Perez here has banged his nose, as Paul has indicated, on that barrier on the side of the road, and it's his fork, in fact, which has snapped. And
in fact, Phil, actually, those forks belong to the bike of Hernan Buenajora, 161, the leader of the Selle Italia team. So I wonder if he's up and riding again, a man we would expect to see a little further on. And this, again, is another guy down on the ground. So several riders have gone down because of that crash there. And this could well be Buenajora himself who is down, and he doesn't look too good.
Well, I hope he gets up and rides, because Buenajora is one of those really good climbers and will do extremely well in this race when we go north in about 8 days' time. It looks as though he is okay. He'll have a job to get back to the peloton, Paul, because they're racing at 43, 44 kilometres an hour right now. Look at the gap, as you can see from my helicopter tracking. We've gone back to the leaders now, but 3 names there looking a bit shaky. Julio Perez, Christoph Brandt and Hernan Buenajora. Now, are we going to get a little cut back here to the shunt again? There it is, right in the centre, Bob. Usually a touch of wheels. I would suspect those forks broke because of the impact rather than before, would they?
Yes, I think that's an indication. The way they were broken anyway is that they broke because of a crash, and they did not break causing a crash. Let's hope that that's not the case.
Yeah.
The guys were talking, chit-chatting, reaching for a water bottle or a bite to eat, touched wheels, came down in the middle of the peloton. When you're going that fast and the helicopter's close, you can't really hear what's happening in front of you, and it's easy to plow into the riders that have fallen without ever laying eyes on them, and just suddenly you're down on the street.
Yeah, that's the big problem with the helicopter. Very often you hear the squeal of brakes, and that causes the reaction. When the chopper gets down that close, it does make it very loud sometimes. But these 2 guys at the front, that's not affecting them at all, is it, Bob? They've got their job in hand, and that certainly was a serious snap for the wheels of Hernan Buenajora, and he won't be using that bike this evening.
It's hard to imagine that he wound up about 50 yards beyond where his bike came to rest. He was quite a ways up the road, so he might have tumbled for a while. He and the Mexican Julio Perez looked like they were a bit bad off, though, but let's hope they can get back into the peloton. And I think that we would see a lot from Julio Perez in the steeper mountains. It's a shame that he continues to have this bad luck.
Testa della Corsa indicating this is the front of the bike race. There are a few arms going up and down now, Bob. I think what Casarotto wants to know is just exactly how the race is developing behind. When you've been away for almost 70 kilometers. You want to know just exactly which teams are chasing. You want to know what the speed of the chase is in the main field, and that's why the team manager keeps coming up like this all the time.
It's an indication that the legs are starting to feel a little bit heavy from the effort. You want to know if you should carry on with your efforts at this point. Morale is everything in a bike race, and if you decide that the sprinters or teams are chasing really hard, it's hard to continue putting the pressure on the pedals and putting your efforts into the breakaway when you know you'll probably get caught anyways. But you got to keep trying, because you never know what could happen. If a leader of this Giro, like Garzelli or Simoni or Pantani had fallen, the peloton would slow way down, and they might have a chance to stay away.
So looking then back with the two leaders now, more than 100 kilometres in front. The gap is coming down to around about 5 minutes at 47 kilometres to go. They're still riding 2 or 3 kilometres ahead of the field. They probably are totally unaware of the crash we've just witnessed, which has left 3 riders in a bit of pain and struggling at the rear of the field in the Giro d'Italia today. Let's hope they get up and get back, because they're 3 good names. We want to see them in this race by the time we get to the finish. There's the worst off, Julio Perez. See you shortly. To be a very aggressive rider, looking to have a promising future. Now, Paul, we're back with the main field here, and keep an eye out for that pink jersey.
1 or 2 other riders got caught out behind that crash as well, as we look here at the Gruppo Maglia Rosa, the group of the pink jersey. In fact, the man who's leading the King of the Mountains competition and the winner of yesterday's stage, Danilo De Luca, got caught out, but his team were very attentive. They were all around him and have paced him back into this group right now. Hernan Buenajora, on the other hand, I would think, Phil, is having a very difficult time trying to catch up with this group, because the pressure is still on. We're looking at around about 50 kilometers an hour average speed, and at the moment, with 46 kilometers to go to the finish, these riders have got to lose around about 1 minute every 10 kilometers, and that is very doable, isn't it, Bob?
That's quite easy to do when you get a little bit tired. Here's probably some chasers trying to come back onto the peloton, some Bonjour riders. We might see Buenajora, if that must have been him there, his teammate there, trying to bring him back into the peloton. It's not hard to catch up, but if you've hurt yourself, then the rest of the day is quite difficult.
Full of pink jerseys there from Team Telecom as well. I think Kevin Livingstone and Jan Ulrich as well. 191 there was involved in that little fracas at the side of the road. So Ulrich, Phil, riding very much at the back of the Giro d'Italia at the moment, and certainly I think only one decision made in his mind now, that this Giro d'Italia for him is totally over, and what he has to do is try and ride himself into some condition for July and the Tour de France. And
also noted there, Endrio Leone, one of the big sprinters. Well, if you missed our coverage yesterday, and I certainly hope you didn't, because you missed a great show, I'll tell you that, we'll take a chance now to have a look back at the first big test for the contenders, and our first real opportunity now to see who would battle for the 2001 Giro. Here's Paul Sherwin to recap on stage 4.
In the journey up to Montevergine in stage 4, the race for the GC began in earnest. Rick Verbrugge looked anxious while riding in the peloton, still smarting from a fall earlier in the day and trying to align his joints after a visit to the chiropractor as a result of the previous day's carnage. But it was leader-in-waiting Dario Frigo who got stuck chasing back to the pack after a crash slowed his journey to the top. Gilberto Simone's Lampre-Dakin squad drove the peloton as they approached the final climb in Avellino, where Julio Perez attacked and quickly gained 30 seconds, trying to be the first Mexican ever to win a Giro stage. At the front of the peloton, the big contenders jockeyed for position, including 2-time winner Ivan Gotti, Stage 5 winner last year Danilo De Luca. Further down the road, Rick Verbrugge struggled to keep pace with the peloton, and his pink jersey slipped away with every pedal stroke. Perez continued to look strong on the climb, but his chain was not, and down he went. His team car nowhere in sight, his fate was sealed. With Perez out, the Cantina Tolo squad motored up the climb with De Luca in tow. As the climb grew steeper, the selection got smaller. Inside 1K to go, 20 riders remained in the front. And here, even Marco would crack. Coming into the final stretch, it was De Luca just in front of Simoni and Garzelli. Dario Frigo had recovered from his difficulty to spend his first day in pink. With Casagrande out, Frigo is now the leader of the Faso Bortolo squad. Will he wear pink in Milan? Stage 8 will be his next big test.
And no problems so far today for Dario Frigo, but there is problems here, as you can see now, for Hernan Buenajora. He's coming back to the race, but he's contacted the doctor. He has a problem, I think it's with his left leg, Paul.
Well, after that crash, I think he got catapulted over the top of his machine. And Bob is probably right. The fact is, the impact broke those forks, so he must have hit a rider on the ground and got thrown over the top, because he was about 20 or 30 yards away from his machine on the ground at the time. But it's amazing how, in a crash like this, how you can bounce back, because the muscles are still pretty hot from having been in the saddle for almost 4 hours right now, and it's usually the day after that you really start to feel the aches and pains.
We saw a couple of our favorites, Ulrich and De Luca, coming back into the peloton after that crash, and that's one of the main dangers of sitting in the back of the group and why all the race leaders want to be in the front. So if you get delayed behind a crash, even if you don't fall down, your team has to spend a lot of energy coming back off the group and pacing their team leader back into the peloton. And it seems like Ulrich not interested in the GC anymore, like you said, Paul. He's at the back of the peloton trying to get some good form, but that's the danger. You can lose lots of time.
Well, there's Daniel Hondo, winner of 2 stages, leader of this race on the points competition for the most consistent daily finisher. We can't dispute that with him at the moment. The gap now is 4 minutes 45 seconds. They are closing in. Is it quick enough? They've still got about 45 minutes to catch up with the leaders. So, with 2 riders still away, we'll take another short break. Looking down from the best seat in the house, almost 5 hours in the saddle for the Tour men today, heading up to a distance of around 141 miles. And they're levelling out a little bit, both breakaway and chasers doing the same speed right now, but the gap nonetheless falling. 3 minutes 41, Paul.
Well, that's coming down nicely for those, the main field, I should say. It's a pity for the 2 guys in the front, because they put in a sterling effort, attacking after 70 kilometres and building up a maximum lead of over 8 minutes, but now it's on the way down. It's a risk that you take when you go for a long breakaway like this. You hope that you can build up enough advantage to try and stay off the front of the main field, and you hope that the teams of the sprinters take it just a little bit too late before they start to turn on the gas. But right now, it seems as if the teams of the sprinters are completely in the driving sprint seat. They've got the speed up high, and it looks as if they will, in the last 4 or 5 kilometres, catch the 2 leaders.
Bit of a tight field down there, Bob. Now, viewers who are seeing cycling for the first time must think they're awfully close together.
They are very close together, and crashes happen quite often. Just one moment's inattention. If you're distracted in any way, you can touch wheels, touch bars, go down, and they're so close together and going so fast that riders just plow into the back of the guys that have fallen, and you get a complete covering of the road of bodies and bicycles, and it's hard to get around. A lot of guys have to stop, like we saw. Ulrich had to stop there and wait for the road to clear before he could get around and start to chase. In the meantime, the sprinters teams at the front are going around 50, 55 kilometers an hour, sometimes a lot faster than that. Then you really have to chase.
Seeing Vladimir Belli there having a chat with Pascal Hervé, Paul, reminds me of that time I had that wonderful occasion commentating on the Tour de France, when there were 3 riders in the professional cycling circuit called Belli, Ellie and Lelly. And as a commentator's nightmare, all 3 got in the same breakaway together. So it was Belli, Lelly and Ellie in the lead.
It was pretty amazing. And in fact, you didn't stumble over any one of those guys.
Well, thank you, Paul. You're extremely kind today. Must have got
but it's interesting to see that Belli is riding very well here. He's at the front of that group, leading the Faso Bortolo riders. We're getting a time check now of just over 4 minutes. And it's, as we said, still in what the sprinters will feel comfortable of, the 1 minute per every 10 kilometres level. And that's what they try and work out. And it's amazing how the sprinters always manage to work out just exactly how fast they have to go to catch these guys at the very last minute. Because they don't, do they, Bob, want to catch them too far out, because it means that then the attacks start to come over the top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. They want to time it just right so there's no chance for any other type of breakaways to get organized. They want about 10 to 5Ks from the finish for the long breakaway to come back into the peloton.
I must say, Bob, on that calculation, Paul, there's just 40 kilometres to go on 4 minutes lead. It could be a very tight finish, this.
It could be a very tight finish. It'll come down to the last 4 or 5Ks. But I'm fairly certain that the sprinters want to have their chance today, Phil. Mario Cipollini there, you can see him wearing 151. He's pretty keen to try and get his victory. There was a rumour around this morning he was going to start in a black jersey and use an all-black machine to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Cannondale, but obviously he's got 1 fine under his belt already for not wearing his regulation equipment. So maybe he's decided to save it till later in the Giro, because you can get in one stage race 2 fines for not wearing the same team clothing as the rest of the team. So maybe Mario's got something else up his sleeve.
It wouldn't surprise me in the least. He's a colourful character. Now, the tail of the field here, just having a bit of a rest right now. And I think I caught beside the Perez sitting near the back, so he looks as though he's got back in the field after that crash. These are the two leaders. There's their overall position, 76 for Casarotto, 10 minutes 49 seconds he's looking for today. Best placed of the two, because Gobi is nearly at the end of the field of 176 starters today. He's 171st and more than half an hour behind. But don't worry about that. This is a young man with a long-term future as a good pro bike rider. He showed us already in 4 days of racing. He has been looking for moves. He's been in the breakaway on 3 days so far, and albeit swept up, but he'll keep on trying by the look of it. Now, looking down here, certain riders hoping to rest. Paolo Sabadelli had a bad day yesterday. There he is. He's the rider that lost so much time, and probably the Tour as well.
Riding alongside him in the black jersey is 101, and that's in fact David Rebellin, who's having a very quiet Tour, not doing too much at the front, but he's very high in the overall standings right now. A sensible bike rider who could this year ride high in the rankings. There is Belly, and in fact your other friend Ellie is also in the race this year because he rides for Team Telecom. But I've got a funny feeling that Lely is not riding this one. Well,
there we go. So our little company of solicitors or lawyers going to have to be without one of their partners today. The field's speeding along. The gap is now officially inside 4 minutes, but they're going to have to move 3 minutes 50 at 35 kilometres to go. They're going to need to keep to a very fast average to bring them back. We'll take a quick break. Join us again soon. And welcome back to the Giro d'Italia. We are now about 20 miles from the finish of today's stage, and these two riders doing a little bit more than just hang on. Their advantage at 3 minutes and 50 seconds. But the field now has started to chase in earnest. There are 3 teams now, Paul, have a real interest in the finish.
They do. The team of Mario Cipollini Seiko have been constantly at the front, with a couple of riders from Team Telecom to take the pace up for Danilo Hondo, and also the team of Alessio of Ivan Quaranta. But there's a couple of other names of sprinters we'd like to throw into the mix as well, because they've been looking for the win over the last couple of days. Enrio Leone is riding pretty well, as is the Frenchman Damien Nazon. And Bob and I were talking just a few moments ago, and we had a feeling that maybe Jeroen Blijlevens now from the Lotto squad, having had the responsibility of defending the pink jersey from his shoulders, he may well mix it in the sprint, because he hasn't had a win so far this year, but he's shown good form.
He's on good form. He could be a danger man in the sprint. He's very, very fast and very aggressive rider. He's won stages in the Vuelta, the Tour, and the Giro d'Italia. Hasn't won a race this year, and I'm sure he would love to do so in light of the fact that Verbrugge's lost his pink jersey. Lotto can send some guys into a real lead out for him. They don't have to make the tempo into the run-in, and that's something to think about. So you don't know as a sprinter which riders you should have do the tempo to catch the breakaway, and then which riders to do the pure, speedy lead out in the finale. Lotto's at a good advantage today.
Well, as we watch the two leaders here, the two boys who've ridden this race know all about it, so they're saying it will be a sprinter. So let's have a look then through the voice of Bob Roll, what life is like with the unique breed of men who battle for the finish in the mass bunches.
Sprinters are not like normal bike racers, who are not like any other lunatic you've ever heard of. Sprinters are the omega men of alpha males. There are rules set in concrete for the sprinters, such as never yield the wheel, never show fear, and never ever touch your brakes. If you brake, you die. Pulling jerseys and throwing elbows at 40+ miles per hour, surrounded by paranoid schizophrenics, inches from steel barriers, is just another day at the office. Sprinters are the linebackers of bike racing. Pithy, health-conscious, skinny puppy climbers need not apply. A chain gang indeed.
Well, Danilo Hondo there is the man with 2 stage victories so far this Tour, but they haven't been really pure sprint finishes. They've been tough approaches to the line. Strong man like Hondo has succeeded. This is the first pure sprint if they regroup.
If they regroup, and it is going to be a very fast sprint, Phil, because actually over the last 3 kilometres on the run-in, a mainly downhill run-in with a couple of bends just to throw in a bit of excitement for the sprinters, as Bob was talking about. There's a right-hand bend inside the last kilometre, and then a left-hand bend with 400 metres to go, and then it's a straight bolt at the line. The kind of sprint that Mario Cipollini would like to have his red guard drop him off just with 400 metres to go to the finish. But Mario has got a great organised team for the lead-outs, but he doesn't really seem these days to have the sprint, the kick that you need at the end to take out the big wins.
That's true, and Ivan Quaranta has become the man with the highest top end at the very end of these races. Very speedy, perhaps not as much resistance as Danilo Hondo or Mario Cipollini. And we saw Quaranta get dropped when those two riders were able to stay in the peloton. Hondo coming up with the win, Mario peeling off, not quite speedy enough for that. I don't know. I like Ivan Quaranta for today if it all comes back together.
I think that if is still in capital letters, Bob, because at 3 minutes 20 seconds, the latest gap we've just seen, it is hardly tumbling down at a great rate of knots. And this is why I think the riders at the front here for the three big sprinters teams, in the mauve colours there is Telecom, in the red it's Seiko, and the other blue and white and black is Alessio. They are really going to have to call on for more assistance at the front, I think, but otherwise they're not going to catch them. This is Francesco Secchiari from the Seiko team, who's now been called into action. But you see, there are now three riders coming forward here for Quaranta's Alexio Aluminio team. He's got three up. There's only two from Telecom and a couple from Seiko. They need more. Here comes the lovely split around this roundabout.
This is the dangerous part of all the run-ins nowadays in the sport of international cycling, because all of these small towns around Europe have this road furniture, these directional islands, and it's when the race splits up like that and comes back together again, if you're not paying attention, Bob, it really does cause a havoc.
I think that's probably how Verbrugge crashed a couple of days ago. His first crash, it was in town. It came together. He was in an island, actually, trying to get a new bike. They're very dangerous. In my day, there was none of that, and it was a lot safer riding. There was also not as many of those steel barriers that you see, that when you knock your head into that, it's really grim. And Julio Perez breaking his chain yesterday. Hopefully he didn't break his nose today.
Indeed. That'd be far more serious. But he's got a few days now. It's over a week before we get to the serious mountains up in the north of Italy to complete this tour. Now, you see the lovely crowds here. This is their #1 sport. They love their cycle racing. They know their riders. And that is why half of the field in the Giro d'Italia are, in fact, Italian. And they're probably breathing a big sigh of relief after their good showing yesterday, because the papers weren't very kind to them until, of course, they came out of the woodwork yesterday and produced a great stage winner and a new race leader. Now, they have got to get this speed up, Paul, if they're going to have any chance of bridging 3 minutes in 30 kilometres. They're going to have to ride at 50k an hour.
Well, the speed is pretty high right now. You can see all of these big guys at the front now are taking quite a lot of risks going around these corners. I caught a quick glimpse there of Kai Hundermark. It is coming down pretty sensibly now, 2 minutes and 40 seconds. We were just a kilometre ago going through the sign indicating 30 kilometres to go to the finish line. So obviously now you can see the panic appearing on the riding style of these guys. I think that graphic is just a little bit wrong right now, because these graphics are actually coming from GPSs which are mounted onto the motorbike. So if the motorbike is at the back of the pack, you don't always get a true reading. I would think it's going to be around about 2 minutes when we come back after the break.
I think the motorbike in the main field had just about stopped there and wasn't with the race at all, because it meant the breakaway was going twice as fast as the bunch, and that certainly isn't true. Anyway, the Alexia team are hunting now for a victory for Quaranta, Seiko for Cipollini. They need to catch it
to straighten the back up. But look, the mechanic has also got hold of the seat there. That's a little bit dangerous, Bob.
Yeah, and that was the problem. He didn't realise for a minute the rider was falling off, and he still had hold of his bike.
He almost saved it there, but oh my gosh.
I think sorry was what the mechanic was trying to say. Didn't mean it, but we're up and running. He's back on the bike. It's quite remarkable the way these guys bounce back sometimes. And you can see the doctor, he is at the back of the bike race all of the time, trying to keep these guys going, because the important thing about a stage race is one thing you can't forget is you have to finish every individual stage. And that's what the doctor's trying to do right now. Miguel Angel Peña has come back to try and help his teammate, but as is often the case, he's gone straight by him.
Holding onto the car, it's pretty easy to go right past your teammate there. If he was pedaling under his own power, he might not have even caught him. Oh, I hate to see that. One time in the Tour de France, Jeff Pierce, who had crashed, was holding on to the the doctor's car, and actually the doctor, he was holding on to the door handle, and he pressed it just a little bit too hard. The door handle swung open and knocked Jeff down off his bike again, and he was being administered to his cuts, and he had to come back to the doctor's car and get the new cuts covered up just as the doctor had finished. Terrible to see that.
Now, the boys in red, the Telecom, I think there's one or two Lotto getting involved. The chase is very serious now. I think there's been a realisation here, as the Once team are also moving up to the front in those yellow jerseys. There is a realisation this breakaway is not being reeled in quick enough.
You can see 113 there was the sprinter we were talking about a little earlier. That was Jeroen Blijlevens. But obviously, Alexia have got an awful lot of confidence in their sprinter at Testa del Gruppo, the front of the main field. And still, Phil, they are all mixing it very much, and you can see the difference in the speed, and I'm surprised that the gap is not coming down more dramatically. The only reason that it isn't, as we looked at the Testa della Corsa, the front of the bike race, I think is because the teams of the sprinters don't want to catch these two guys until around about 5 kilometers left to go.
So they're trying to judge their kill as usual to perfection, but sometimes they get outwitted by ambition. And these two riders, very long reach on the ride on the right of our picture, the young Gobi. He likes to stretch himself out on his bike, not quite like Casarotto there. You can get some idea of the speed from the helicopter over the ground of the peloton. 2 minutes 8 seconds. It will be touch and go at a gap at 2 minutes 8 seconds, but they might well time it right. These roads are not conducive for a good breakaway now. They are long and straight. That will change as they approach the finish in Nettuno. We'll just take another short break. And there you are, 60 kilometers an hour, 38 miles an hour for the chase group now. The gap is just over 2 minutes. We are 20 kilometers from the finish, so they're riding to our system of a minute every 10 kilometers. And by my calculation, Paul, they'll catch them a meter from the line.
Well, that's what it's all about. That's how the teams of the sprinters work it out. The difference in speed between the front group and the back group is absolutely enormous. These guys, as we saw from the motorbike just a few moments ago, are doing 60 kilometers an hour. After a long breakaway, the two guys in the front can probably average 45 or 46 kilometers an hour. That gives them a distance over the last hour of racing of over 10 kilometers, so they can wipe that away completely. I think it's interesting to note right now that the Lotto squad have come forward. They've put 1 or 2 riders in the front. Despite defending the pink jersey since the start of the bike race, they've obviously had the word from Jeroen Blijlevens that he feels like he's got a chance of taking out the win.
Well, that'd be very nice, especially for Lotto. And while we're talking about Lotto and the man who lost his race lead yesterday, as they go under the 20 kilometers to go banner, if you're just joining our live coverage here, there is the overall situation at the start of today. A new leader in Dario Frigo, and second place Abraham Olano, and up to third now Gilberto Simoni. Vladimir Belli fourth, and Di Grande, good rider he is, he's riding high there now in 6th place. That's the overall situation at the start of today's stage. A little bit further down, these are some of the day's big losers. Look at the man in 79th there. Jan Ullrich lost over 8 minutes yesterday for a total time deficit of almost 11 now. Garzelli, last year's winner, still riding well in 18th place. Pantani slips slightly, he's 14th, but he's still a challenger.
It's dropping pretty dramatically now, Phil. It's 1 minute and 24 seconds to the two leaders. But this morning in the start area, we're hearing that Francesco Casagrande is now looking at starting the Tour de France this year in good shape. And he's being looked after by an orthopedic surgeon by the name of Claudio Costa. And if you're a motorbike or a car racing fan, you'll know that Claudio Costa is the man that puts a lot of the motorbike riders back together again. And that is a big problem with Francesco Casagrande's break. It was not a good break, but he feels that he will be competitive in the month of July, and he'll certainly come back there with a vengeance.
Well, that would be good news, and don't forget we're live with the Tour de France every day, so we didn't get a great opportunity to see Francesco in the Giro d'Italia. Perhaps we'll do a better job for you when we do the Tour de France in July. These are the two leaders. They got away around about 70 kilometers out today after the Intergiro sprint. David Casarotto, 3 wins this year. He's the rider in the lead just now. And Michele Gobi, the former under-23 European road race champion. He's still only a youngster and a long career hopefully ahead of him. That's his teammate there, team manager rather, advising him of the new time gap which we've just seen. I can't see them staying out there for maybe 10, 15 kilometers.
The only thing that they can hope now, Phil, is the reason they're keeping going like this is because they want to get into the outskirts of the town. Because very often when you get into town, it's a little bit chaotic. There's left turns, right turns, and that gives you the advantage over the main field behind, because the main field might back off just a little bit, worried about crashes, trying to set up the sprint for their top men, their fast men, and that's the only thing that's allowing these two guys to keep going right now. But you see, with an organised armada on the front like this, it's almost impossible to stay clear.
It is impossible, generally speaking, to stay clear. It's very difficult. The Alessio rider and the Mobilvetta rider, however, at this time in Italian TV, they're getting quite a bit of coverage for their sponsor. They're recouping all of the sponsorship budget on one day. They're going to get a lot of time for their two sponsors, which is what drives the Giro d'Italia and international bike racing, is TV time for the sponsors. And Alessio, as well as Mobilvetta, will be well known in Italy at the end of this stage.
just see riding very close to the front. The white jersey on the right-hand side there is one of the Faso Bortolo riders at the Testa del Gruppo, meaning at the front of the group. He's keeping the pink jersey, Dario Frigo, at the front of the bike race, making sure that he's out of danger. And yesterday he had that little accident at the bottom of the climb, and as we mentioned a couple of days ago, all of the bikes in the Giro d'Italia this year, Phil, have transponders on, and the reason for that is because they want to time certain ascensions of the mountains. And yesterday Dario Frigo was the fastest man up the climb, 28 seconds faster than Rebellin, Garzelli and De Luca. But I think, although that was a very fast climb, as we look at Kevin Livingston taking up the rear here, I think Dario Frigo is going to have a very difficult time when we come to the big mountains.
Well, that bunch now, Paul, is absolutely flying, so surely these guys aren't going to hold out. If the long straight road, as you see here, not conducive now, it's okay if you're leading by 5 or 6 minutes, but at a minute and a half, they're going to get some idea as to where you are, because on a road like this, they will see the helicopter flying above the riders, and we're only 16 kilometers away from the line here. And so now I think this has been a good softening up job, though, nonetheless, by David Casarotto, because he's the teammate of a good sprinter, Endrio Leone. We've mentioned him already. He's a winner this year many times, and he's a rider, I think, who might be able to spoil it for the rest today.
Well, that's the big advantage that they have as well, because we've seen the teams on the front of Quaranta, Cipollini and a few guys from Team Telecom, but we haven't seen any of the rise from Leone's team at the front. They've been able to take a back seat because they've got a man in the breakaway. They're playing two cards right now. If the breakaway doesn't get caught, as we get the typical shot of the horses going around the field, we seem to get this every year at all the major tours. The important thing for Alessio is they've got a man in the breakaway and they've got a very fast sprinter.
Just 50 seconds now. The gap is tumbling rather dramatically. The boys can smell the quarry as they're now racing up towards them. And if they do catch him in the next couple of kilometres, and that's, I think, the 10-kilometre banner to go just ahead there, and then we are going to see a real free-for-all on what looks a rather untidy road just here, not greatly surfaced after the winter. It is 15k to go, so a little bit further. Not good news for these riders. I've forgotten we haven't seen the 15k banner, but there we are. Two riders in the lead. 9 miles to go to the finish, and jumping at the heels now of these two riders is the field, with all of their sprinters itching to get down to the town of Nettuno. Don't go away. And these two riders now are hanging on as best they can as we head down towards the finish. 13 kilometres to go. And hanging on's the word now, Paul. 40 seconds.
Well, in fact, it's coming down all the time.
30 seconds. Even closer.
13 kilometres all'arrivo to the finishing line in Nettuno, where, in fact, in 1943, if you're interested in history, it's where the Americans embarked on their invasion of Europe. But at the moment, we're looking at the invasion of the sprinters coming into Nettuno right now, because certainly you can see the pedalling action of these two guys. They've lost the will, haven't they, Bob? They realise now it's all over. It's got to be all over for them. They need to sit up now. They probably get shelled by the peloton in the finale. And here's our man that crashed earlier.
Oh, dear.
Tore up his kit.
Mr.
That's
Garcia.
not very comfortable at all, and you can tell by the way he's sitting on his bike that he's having a very difficult finale on a day when he should have been able to take it easy, and that's a good point to make for a GC man. If that happens, it's very uncomfortable. Overnight, you're tossing and turning, and every time you turn around, you wake up in your bed. It's very hard. You got a 3-week stage race. There's no substitutions, obviously. No. You got to finish each day with the racers, or there it goes. It's all over with.
He was probably the only rider who wished it was an uphill finish today. At least he would have been out of the saddle. Anyway, that's Garcia in the pack, and these are the two leaders. And as we pull back from the helicopter here, I think we're going to see the chasers, which will be the whole field, and their tails are really up now, because there are two boys in red down there, which we have the Seiko team and the Lotto team. In the mauvish colour is the German Telecom team, and the white coloured team is the team of Quaranta. And even Bonjour, the French team, obviously feeling confident as well, Paul. They're pushing men to the front. Well, they're hoping for them and Damien Nazon to move forward as we look at the Coda del Gruppo, the rear of the group. And we're just trying to get a glimpse there of the speed that these guys are going right now. And I can tell you it's approaching 60 kilometres an hour. So it's a very fast run, and it's going to be very tricky. And at the moment, Bob, if you're in the last 10 or 15 places with 15 kilometres to go, you've got no chance of seeing the front. You need to get a little bit closer to the front. You probably need a big team effort to get you up there. I think that was Jerome Blyleven's who they were showing. They're going to show Leone and Damien Nazon and Blyleven's and Mario Cipollini and Ivan Quaranta on the run, and those are the main men, as well as
Danilo Hondo, who's won 2 stages already. Now, he, interestingly enough, has 2 men on his team that are capable of winning sprints themselves, Kai Hundertmark and Giovanni Lombardi. They will both be leading him out. That's a huge advantage. Here's our 2 leaders being caught by the peloton, and that is a very scary thing to see indeed.
Well, a breakaway, Paul, of around about 140 kilometres for them as they surrender. A smile there from Castorotto. He's done his job well. There was a moment it looked as though it was going to happen, but again, the big chase has happened. And poor old Gobi here, I think this is the 3rd time in the 5 road racing stages we've had, he has tried an attack that hasn't worked.
Well, it's his first Giro d'Italia, but his 2nd year as a professional. He's still very keen to get himself into a breakaway situation. I'm pretty sure before the end of this Giro, we'll see him on the attack once more. There is the main field, taking a very precarious right-hand bend. And you can see how many of the guys holding at the back there. There, 111 is Mario Arts, a man we'll see a little more of in the mountains. And 197 is the birthday boy himself, Kevin Livingston, today celebrating his 28th birthday. And I don't think he's going to celebrate with a win.
It would be very surprising. Kevin is a fantastic climber, but on these fast, flat finishing sprints, he's never factored very highly in those, especially in Europe in a major stage race. But he is a great climber. He'll be looking forward to the mountains to come.
Tempo previsto all'arrivo, 16 minutes is what we're estimated to get down to the finishing line, and it's all on the front by the teams of the sprinters, Phil.
Yes, it's Gruppo Compacto now. Pavel Padranos is the pacemaker for Seiko. He's looking to bring Mario Cipollini home today. I wonder if he will. 10 kilometres to the finish. We'll have a quick break, and then we'll see the big finale. 176 riders in the Giro set off this morning, and they're all heading to the finish as one big pack now. 9 kilometres to go, and it's the Lotto team with a different thought in mind now, no longer thinking of Rick Verbrugge, Paul.
Thinking about Jeroen Blijlevens. He hasn't had a win this year at all, and in fact, as Bob said earlier, as we look at the Gruppo Compacto sign, meaning the whole of the main field is together, he is a very aggressive bike rider. In fact, he was disqualified last year on the last day of the Tour de France for punching out Bobby Julich after the finishing line. So he raced for 3 weeks, punched Bobby Julich in the face and got kicked out of the race and doesn't feature in the result. This is what it looks like at the rear of the main field. Those guys now are just thinking about survival. The guys on the front are thinking about keeping their sprinters in the top 10 or 15 places and just waiting now, aren't they, Bob, to get into the outskirts of town and hope that there aren't too many tricky bends.
It's great to see Team Lotto on the front, realizing that the Giro is such a big race that Jeroen Blijlevens would like to have a stage win, as he has a number of years in the past. They've had plenty of practice of pulling at the front, so maybe they're just sort of in the groove, and they've decided, well, why not have another day on the front for Blijlevens this time instead of Verbrugge.
Could be a nice little turnaround here for Rick Verbrugge, beaten yesterday, lost the lead, and now setting his teammate up for the stage win. That would be some consolation prize. Now, all of these riders at the front at the moment are the throwaway pacemakers of the sprinters on the teams. Their object now is to race as fast as they can and as long as they can, then swing off and hope they've read it just right so that their sprinter is in the best position to come out of the drafting position and take the victory on the line. Most of these riders have never seen the finish in Nettuno before. In fact, I probably would say all of them. It's not a regular finishing town. 7 kilometres to go, Paul. Now then, Bob, who's going to win? Because I need some guidance from you now.
I'd say Ivan Quaranta has the best chance on this type of finish. It's flat, very fast, even slightly downhill. They also have a tailwind blowing off of the coast. I think he'll be very hard to beat. Mobile Vetta at the front there, perhaps for Stratsev. They're fast man.
Oh, you're hedging your bets now. You were very confident a second ago.
I'd say Quaranta. Cipollini also. All right, those two. Danilo Hondo. Can I throw in another half of the field? Quaranta all the way.
It's actually quite interesting, Phil, because there's 2 battles going on here right now. You've got the teams of the sprinters trying to keep their men close to the front, but you see the 3 yellow jerseys of Mercatone Uno there. That's Marco Pantani's boys trying to keep him up to the front. He doesn't want to sprint at the end of the stage, but he wants to make sure that there are no splits in the group on the run-in. And if you catch a glimpse there of number 1 on the Mapei rider, that's last year's winner, Stefano Garzelli. He too is trying to stay in the top 20 or 30 positions as we go through 6 kilometres dall'arrivo from the finishing line. The pink jersey is also right in the top 30.
It's interesting with Garzelli. He tried the other day to get a place in the sprint when Hondo won. He finished 6th, so perhaps he's looking for a win bonus at the line just to annoy the riders, higher up the overall classification. You never know how it will work out later in the Tour. There are 3 bonus times for the winners today. Only a few seconds, yes, but they can alter your position overall. We must keep an eye out for the whereabouts of big Mario Cipollini now. We're going to get riders try to sprint off the front like this. This is Mobile Vetta's Domenico Gualdi. He is a rider who briefly led in the King of the Mountains and lost his lead yesterday, as he now continues at the head of the pace. But he's thinking of bigger fish to fry on his team now.
Bit of disorganisation right now. The team that's going to take up the chase is going to take it up with around about 2 or 3 kilometres to go. There's a lot of red jerseys there. That's a mixture of the Lotto squad and the Seiko Cannondale team of Mario Cipollini. And these guys at the back are just grasping to stay in contact. The teams now try to stay very much together to organise and make sure they can get their sprinter into the last minute into the right position. 5 kilometres left to go, and I've got a funny feeling quite shortly we'll see the red guard, but they seem to be looking around, Bob, as if they can't find out where Cipollini is.
He doesn't seem to be as near to the front that you would imagine he would be. He might have just had a little bit of trouble getting through traffic. They are going quite fast. He doesn't want to expend any extra energy at all getting to the front, so he has that incredible top end at the very finish of the race.
Well, there he is on the left-hand side, the red line now. At the tail of that red line with a big helmet on top of him is Mario Cipollini himself. He'll be waiting till they get into the streets of the finish here in Nettuno before he asks the boys to take it up to 60 kilometers an hour, and then they will peel off one at a time until there's only one man left with him. But you can see there's also a pretty good organisation starting to set up from the pink team there, Telecom. Their man at 4.3 kilometers to go, Danilo Hondo, has proved to be the fastest so far, but the finishers, as Phil has said on several occasions, were not sprinters finishes. They were sprint finishes for hard men.
Well, 4 kilometres to go. The man I can't see at the moment is Quaranta. Now, when he wins stages, he seems to come from nowhere to suddenly flash through as the winner of the stage. He seems to like to lie in the 10th to 15th position and just come out so quickly at the end. It's also cost him a lot of wins because he tends to also come up there in 2nd or 3rd place. That's the race's chief referee there. His job is to stay first car behind the riders, keep an eye on the action. Looks as though one of Quaranta's teammates here, Eddie Seri, has done his bit at the front and he's hanging on at the back now. Well, again, we've got Marco Pantani's team at the front. He looks like Marco riding in 3rd place now at the front at 3.7 kilometres to go.
This is all psychological warfare right now. Pantani, not on his own terrain, is showing the other guys just exactly that he is in good form. There is the Ciclamina jersey right in the middle there, around about 7th or 8th position. That is Danilo Hondo. He's three seats back from his own teammate, and he will wait for them to lift up. The guy swinging off there from Alexia, he's done his term. He's tried to keep his man right at the front of the main field, but very shortly I feel certain we will see Mario Cipollini's team coming forward. But Lotto are looking very dangerous, and they are a well-drilled squad.
Well, Kessler is the rider for Deutsche Telekom, trying to lead out Hondo. Hondo is a strong sprinter. This is a pure sprinter's finish, but he does win races like this, and he's going to have to take on the real thoroughbreds of the event now if he's going to get more points. His object is to build points in the points competition, of which he is the leader with 56 points he had halfway through the race yesterday, and now he needs to build on that. There's 25 more for the victory today.
Chaos coming in now. The last 3 kilometers are mainly downhill because Nettuno being on the coast, we're dropping in over the last final hills, and it is a very fast running. We'll be touching speeds of approaching 70 kilometers an hour. Coming onto the front there, you can see, in fact, that's rather strange to see. It's the Bonjour boys trying to move Damien Nazon to the front. Nazon has had 2 victories in the early part of this season, and we're now inside 2.5 kilometers to go to the finish, and it's absolutely crazy right now in the bunch.
It is madness. You can see a guy do about 100 or 200 meters on the front, and then he's totally blown. He has to pull off, goes right straight to the back of the group. That means that they're going very, very fast indeed.
Well, Bonjour's still on the front there, Phil, and in fact they're running out of boys pretty rapidly. The important thing here is to wait until the very last minute and set up a good lead out for your men. There is Jeroen Blijlevens moving forward. He's lost most of his teammates now, but there is the red guard all together looking after Mario Cipollini. Cipollini very much in the front. Look at the hands moving, coming off the handlebars. That is not actually a legal move, but the referees can't get in there to see that right now. And usually, more than being an illegal move, it's a question of safety, just making sure that the guy knows 1 kilometer to go. Ultimo kilometro, 1,000 metres, Phil, and it's going to be a mad dash for the line.
And it's Tim Jones, the only rider from Southern Africa who's on the front, rides for Mobile Veta, but he's been washed away now as again the push is coming from Seiko. No sign yet of the Lion King though, and no sign yet of Quaranta, as Hondo is still lost in the pack, but Leone also trying to get his way through. He's about 6 men down now. Seiko have got the key lead out here, but they're looking over the shoulder for the big man, and the big man is not really in the hunt here as he comes up towards the line. Where is... No, yes, that's Cipollini is going round the corner now, his second wheel. So Cipollini gets a sight of the finishing line now. Can anybody get over him in the sprint here? Leone is sat up and washed away from it. There's no sign of Quaranta. He was never in the sprint today. As they come up towards the line now, it is going to be a fairly straight... Or is it? No, there's big mistakes come at the front there now. As again, the riders have changed at the front, and this looks as though it is Quaranta coming up to the line. As he scores right on the line, I think it was Ivan Quaranta who got it on the line. And as I just said earlier, Paul, you never see this man until he hits the line.
The reason we didn't see him is because he's wearing the blue jersey of leader of the Inter Giro. He came from nowhere, right through the middle of the pack. And as always, it was total chaos. This man loves to win bike races. He's got an incredible turn of speed. He's very brave indeed. He goes right through the middle of the gap, and he waits for the smallest gap, just wide enough for his handlebars to go through. And there he is, the winner of stage 5, Ivan Quaranta.
And it's never nicer than when he gets the better of Mario Cipollini, I can tell you, because those two are great rivals. This is a rider who started off with a win in the Tour of Langkawi in Malaysia this year, but he hasn't shown much more form since. He's had one small win since then. But you see, he judged his sprint to perfection, and you're right, we did forget, well, I forgot anyway, he was wearing that Inter Giro jersey, which he's lost, by the way, today, because it's gone over to Massimo Strazza. But at first, I really thought as though Leone was going to get up there, and then when we see the head-on shot, he seems to think he can't do it, and he shakes his head. No sign of Hondo either.
Hondo a long way back, around about 10th position for him, but you can see the bumping and barging there. And in fact, that's Mario Cipollini in the red jersey and around about 5th position just now. Cipollini had a good lead to the line by his teammates there, but coming up right on the outside, on the left now, that is Quaranta. He's absolutely storming past everybody else there. That's Leone in the middle there, and you can see as soon as he's got the gap, he opens up. And I would like to see the speed on that finishing line there, because I would say he must have been touching 65, 66 kilometers an hour, which is in excess of 40 miles an hour.
Well, certainly Cipollini cannot allow any longer Quaranta to go like that to the line, because he no longer has the speed legs to get round him. He's got to lead him out in the last 40 or 50 metres if he's ever going to beat this man again. Quaranta doing extremely well. Here's the head-on position of the rustle and bustle of the peloton as it arrives here in Nettuno. There'll be no change at all in the overall situation, because all of these riders will be given the same time today as they finish in the one big pack. They don't split time them, if there's no gaps between them of significance. Looking down on the beach here, it's a lovely 80 to 81 degrees Fahrenheit, and the sun on the beach, and it looks like the beach artists have been at work as well. Italy doing its very best here to entertain the arrival of the 5th day of the Tour de France. It's been a long ride for the guys too, 226 kilometres, but a big reward in the end. And here he comes now, the pin-up boy, Ivan Quaranta. I remember when he got his stage win in the Tour of Malaysia, Tour of Langkawi in Malaysia back in February. He said he was inspired because the promoters of that event used his full picture winning a stage of the previous year on all of the publicity posters. And that said, it inspired him to do it all over again. So he did. He won the stage in Malaysia. Now he's got the one he really wanted. His
Absolutely.
5th career Giro win.
He was looking for that win, but in fact, Phil, that Tour of Malaysia is the first time that we actually saw Ivan Quaranta, because that's where he came through as a very young rider and took out 2 victories 3 years ago, and everyone said, well, who is this guy? But certainly now he's proving that he is the fastest sprinter on the block.
So there they are, Bob. A mouth-open sprinter, and Cipollini, who said it was a stage he could win easily, but he probably would not finish on the podium. Well, it looks like he knew exactly the way it was going to work out. We'll take a quick break, come back for all of the presentations at the Giro d'Italia. Well, there we are. A new pink jersey for Dario Frigo, his 2nd so far. And really today was the sort of day that Verbrugge would have liked. He wasn't troubled at all, was he?
Well, these next couple of days are good days for the man if you've got the pink jersey, because it's going to be controlled very much by the sprinters, because they want to be on their terrain at the moment. As we take one look at this, this is Cipollini in the red jersey trying to come up alongside Ivan Quaranta. But Ivan Quaranta is the kind of guy, if the door opens for him, you're never going to get past him because he is a very rapid man over the last 50 metres.
Well, there's the bunch from the head on, and not for the nervous. This was a classic sprinters finish, the first one we've had after 5 days of road racing on the Giro. Third place, by the way, was taken by Di Biase, just getting it there ahead of Jerome Blyleven's. So the Lotto boys had the right idea, trying to get their man up today, because he got fourth in the sprint. He's not quite as sharp as he used to be, at least yet. Now, here we have a new jersey here for Massimo Strazza now. He's taken over the lead because he won the Intergiro stage today, which came after 43 kilometres. He's been consistent in that throughout. He's now scored enough to take the overall lead. So this has been a great stage so far for the sprinters, and the first one they've wanted. And Strazza, he's sprinting very well, although he never made the first 6 finishes today on the line, so he missed out today, probably feeling he'd done enough to get himself a jersey out on the course. Let's have a look at the stage result now. It's been confirmed here, and there it is. Cipollini beaten by Quaranta, and he'll hate that, believe me. Di Biase getting third, down to Blyleven from Lotto in fourth, Klemenchik coming home in fifth, and Zanotti there getting in the 6th place. But the big news there was Strazza didn't score. Frigo's not interested in these hurly-burly sprint finishes. He's thinking long-term all the way to Milan, which is still more than 2 weeks away, because he wants to do the actual final pink jersey of the Tour de France. So we've had a good day on the Tour. We've seen, as always, trouble out on the road. You never can have a safe day in the Giro d'Italia, even though at the end of it today there was no change overall. But Bob, a very painful day for the poor old Spaniard, wasn't it, Garcia?
Going very fast in the finale, as we've seen. Teams are leading their sprinters out. It's so prestigious to win a Giro stage that is absolute chaos inside the group. Not 1 second of indecision or inattention. It's paid for with skin, basically. He went back after it looked like a plastic bag got caught in his freewheel.
Do you remember that once happened to Thomas Wegmuller? It cost him the win in Paris-Roubaix.
Lost Paris-Roubaix because of that. So they were trying to take it out of his freewheel. I think you're right, Paul. The mechanic was holding on to the seat post of the rider, and in which case you can't steer the bike to save your life. He hit a little bump, pow, over the bars. Very, very excruciatingly painful and a terrible look. Here's Danilo Hondo putting on the purple Ciclamino. That's the points jersey. They love this jersey in Italy, and I'm sure he's very glad to have it.
Well, the thing is that Danilo's got 2 stage wins, and that's worth 50 points. Now, it'll be a couple of days before they eat into that, but he didn't score much there today, and that's significant, I think. A pure sprint, you see, he wasn't in it. Paul?
Absolutely brilliant sprint. Those are the kind of sprints I like to watch. It really is magnificent. The dash in, the organisation amongst the teams, people taking risks. Mario Cipollini was actually pretty well set up by his team. It's not the red train of old. He was a little bit too far back, but he had a very straight go at the line. But once the man there who came across the line in first place, Ivan Quaranta, had opened up the gas, nobody was going to come anywhere near him. And I think it's pretty soon we'll see the end of the reign of El Reo, the king, the Lion King himself, because Cipollini, he's not quite got that edge anymore.
Well, Paul, you've ridden the Tour de France 7 times. Bob, you've ridden the Giro itself. Paul never got to ride the Giro, always on the French teams, you see, that's the trouble. But the thing was, you've both fallen as well. Everybody falls at some stage. How do these guys get pulled back into order tonight so they can start tomorrow? Because obviously they have to start to finish every day.
Well, initially you go to the doctor. He cleans all your wounds, and they have this red goo that they pour onto it, so it keeps the bacteria out of it. It kind of firms up the skin a little bit too. It's very uncomfortable. So as you try to sleep at night, naturally you toss and turn a little bit. But every time you roll over onto your road rest, it wakes you up. It's a very unpleasant experience.
Well, there's the king of the mountains. He was the winner of the stage yesterday, Danilo De Luca. It was Casarotti who won the small climb today, but he wasn't up there. And so De Luca gets to keep that green jersey of the king of the mountains. I always find that a little bit confusing, Paul, because the green jersey normally is the points jersey, and of course in the Tour of Italy it's always the mountains jersey.
The Italians like to do things just a little bit differently, but this is a man who should keep the king of the mountains jersey for quite some time, until we get up into the really big mountains once again. But you know, Danilo De Luca is certainly a man I think will be looking to try and get himself another stage victory, because he's a fantastic bike rider, very aggressive the way he got his win yesterday. But you know, that was a great sprint today. I really enjoyed it, and I just get so excited when the guys come hammering down the finish line. The adrenaline is just like the days of old.
For me, the reason Cipollini didn't win, his team weren't organised. That we've seen that team have all 8 men at the front with a kilometre to go. Now there was nobody there. He's really lost Matteo, who went over to Telecom, hasn't he? He's missed him.
Fagnini, yes, that was
Fagnini,
his main man. Very fast himself. but he was his last guy. And it didn't matter if it was 800 meters out or 500 meters out. He would take him straight to 150 meters to go, and then Cipo was able to come along. You're absolutely right, Phil. That's been a blow to the Team Saeco, losing Fagnini over to the German team, even though he's not racing here. Danilo Hondo learning a little bit from that. But also the thing today is it wasn't a pure sprint until today. The other stages had a little bit of resistance in the finale, and so both Quaranta and Cipollini were left out of those results, but today was pure speed, high end. Cipo's still very fast, but Ivano Quaranta is the main man.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks, Paul. Now we can have a look at the overall situation. No change at all here. Dario Frigo gets a second day in pink, 12 seconds still ahead of Alano, 13 up on Simone and 17 on Belli. Further down, same names. Jan Ruska there, 7th, Vladimir Duma in 8th. Don't forget our website too, www.olntv.com. You can catch up on all the cycling there. We'll be back again.